They keep waiting for the next Great Depression to arrive with a stock market crash, 25% unemployment, and black and white newsreels of men in fedoras selling apples on corners. That's not how this one works. This one is silent, in 4K color, and infinitely more vicious because the official numbers lie, the cameras look the other way, and the victims still put on uniforms and clock in at 6 a.m., pretending everything is fine. Right now, December 2025, 653,000 Americans will have nowhere to sleep tonight, while 11.2 million perfectly good homes sit empty and dark. The national average one-bedroom rent is $1,870 a month. The average full-time worker makes $27 an hour before taxes. That's 19 days of rent if they hand over every single dollar they earn. 78% of households are one paycheck from the street. 44 million people are on food stamps, and 40% of adults say they couldn't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. This is not a dip. This is not inflation cooling. This is the new permanent floor of American life, and most of the country is already living on it. We're going to show you exactly how deep the rot goes, who built it this way on purpose, and why no election is coming to save you. Stay until the very last second. The final section is the one the architects of this nightmare pray you never understand. Shelter for zero, homes deliberately held hostage. Every single night, HUD counts at least 653,000 human beings with no roof. At the exact same moment, the U.S. Census Bureau says there are 11.2 million vacant homes sitting dark across the country. Enough to give every homeless person 17 empty houses and still have inventory left over. More than half of those 11.2 million are rated good or excellent condition. They're not waiting for families. They're waiting for higher asset prices. In Los Angeles, 75,000 people sleep on sidewalks directly underneath luxury high-rises that are 30 to 40% vacant on purpose. In Phoenix, entire new subdivisions built in 2022 to 2023 are still 100% empty, while tent cities in the washes triple in size every year. In Detroit, you can buy a fully renovated 3-bedroom for $45,000 cash, and the corporate owner will let it sit and rot before they'll rent it for $900 a month, because renting it would hurt comparable sales for the other 20 houses they own on the same block. BlackRock, Invitation Homes, Progress Residential, American Homes for Rent, and foreign funds now own more single-family homes than at any time in American history. They openly tell their investors they will keep 10 to 20% of inventory dark in every market to maintain pricing power. This is not a housing shortage. This is the largest, most deliberate withholding of basic human shelter in recorded history. The rent that devoured the paycheck. The national average one-bedroom rent just crossed $1,870. In the top 50 metros, it's $2,100 to $2,800. To even be considered under corporate landlord rules, you must now prove gross income of 3.5 to 4 times rent, $90,000 to $120,000 a year. The median full-time wage in America is $56,000 gross. That worker is now automatically disqualified from 70 to 80% of listings before they even click Apply. 78% of American households have less than $2,000 in total savings. 62% have less than $1,000. One $400 rent increase, one broken transmission, one surprise medical bill. And the 30-day pay or quit notice is already printed. Corporate landlords aren't raising rent because water or property taxes went up. They're raising rent because Apollo Global Management, Blackstone, and Pretium Partners pay 7- and 8-figure bonuses for every extra point of same-store revenue growth. They brag about it on earnings calls while people sleep in cars. Full-time job, zero-time home. The fastest-growing homeless population in 2025 is not addicts or the chronically unemployed. It is people with full-time paychecks. Registered nurses in Dallas-Fort Worth sleep in their cars in hospital parking garages between 12-hour shifts because $1,700 rent on a $68,000 salary is impossible. Amazon FC associates in Ontario, California live in RVs parked on the dirt lot directly across from the warehouse they just worked 60 hours in. Public school teachers in Tampa shower at Planet Fitness, keep clothes in gym lockers, and grade papers at McDonald's at 10 p.m. Nationwide, over 2.5 million employed Americans now live in vehicles, storage units, tents, or couches. In California, Oregon, Washington, and Texas, 40 to 55% of the visible homeless population has at least one steady job. Many have two. This is what happens when rent eats 50 to 75% of take-home pay and real wages for the bottom 80% have not beaten shelter inflation in 25 consecutive years. Healthcare, the second deadlier eviction. Average 2025 ER visit before insurance, $2,947. Average individual deductible, $2,800, so you pay full price anyway. Average ambulance ride you didn't call for, $1,700 to $3,200. Average 3-day hospital stay, $82,000 to $127,000 billed. A single vial of name-brand insulin costs $8 to $12 to produce and sells for $140 to $350 here. A generic EpiPen 2-pack that costs $10 in France is $690 here. Childbirth with no complications routinely tops $35,000. More than 530,000 American families file medical bankruptcy every single year. More people than live in the entire state of Vermont financially executed because they got sick or injured. Private equity firms now own over 40% of emergency rooms, 30% of nursing homes, and thousands of physician practices. The first thing they do is cut staff and raise prices 30 to 70%. Hospitals charge $27 for one Tylenol, $42 for a paper gown, $115 for a bag of saline that costs 44 cents wholesale. This is not health care. This is organized financial violence wearing scrubs. Rural America was murdered, not neglected. They still sell you the fantasy. Just move to the country, houses are cheap. It's one of the cruelest lies left in 2025. Since 2010, 142 rural hospitals have closed their doors forever. Another 712 are on the critical risk list according to the Cecil G. Sheps Center. That means in over 2,100 counties, entire swaths of Appalachia, the Great Plains, the Mississippi Delta, and the Ozarks, the nearest emergency room is now 60 to 120 minutes away on crumbling 2-lane roads full of potholes the size of bathtubs. In 2025, if you have a heart attack in parts of rural Missouri, Kansas, or Texas, you're more likely to die before the ambulance arrives than at any time since the 1920s. Broadband, forget it. Over 42 million rural Americans still have no access to 25 megabits per second internet, the FCC's own minimum definition of broadband. That means no remote work, no telemedicine, no online school during bad weather is impossible, and selling anything online is a fantasy. Jobs? The manufacturing plants closed decades ago. The new economic development is a Dollar General and a warehouse that pays $15 to $17 an hour with mandatory 60-hour weeks during peak. You can buy a 4-bedroom Victorian on a double lot for $70,000 cash, but the nearest job that pays above poverty wages is 80 to 100 miles away. Round-trip gas alone would eat 25 to 35% of your paycheck. Water systems are literally collapsing. In parts of rural California, New Mexico, and West Texas, wells are going dry because corporate farms and data centers upstream are sucking the aquifers faster than nature can refill them. In Mississippi and Arkansas, century-old municipal water plants are failing, and the town can't afford the $20 to $40 million fix, so people haul drinking water in 5-gallon jugs from the next county over. Life expectancy in the hardest-hit rural counties has fallen 5 to 8 years since 2010, worse than during the Dust Bowl. Suicide rates for men aged 35 to 64 in rural America are now triple the urban rate. Meth and fentanyl didn't cause this. Hopelessness did. And the response from Washington? More subsidies for factory farms that employ almost nobody. More tax breaks for billionaires who buy 10,000-acre ranches as conservation investments, and endless speeches about how rural people just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. This is not neglect. This is strategic abandonment. They decided rural America is no longer profitable to maintain, so they let it die quietly while harvesting the last drops of labor and land value. Work until you break, own nothing, die exhausted. In 2025, 9.4 million Americans worked 2 or more jobs just to stay in the red. The Bureau of Labor Statistics quietly stopped publishing the multiple job holders number in its headline reports because it got too embarrassing, but the raw data is still there if you dig. The average work week for full-time salaried workers crossed 52.4 hours years ago and keeps climbing. When you add the second gig, the DoorDash shifts, the weekend warehouse stints, the average American in the bottom 80% is now working harder than at any time since the 1930s. Productivity since 1980 is up 82 to 85% depending on whose numbers you use. Real wages for the bottom 80%, when adjusted for the actual costs that matter, rent, healthcare, education, childcare, transportation, are up 11 to 12%. That missing 70+% didn't disappear. It was systematically vacuumed upward through. Union density collapsing from 35% in the 1950s to 6% today. Tax rates on corporations and the ultra-rich slashed from 52 to 70% to 21%. Stock buybacks legalized in 1982, illegal before that. Companies now spend $1+ trillion a year buying their own shares instead of raising wages. Non-compete agreements that lock you into poverty wages. Gig classification that denies overtime, health insurance, and unemployment benefits. Corporations made a record $2.84 trillion in profits in 2024 while telling you there's no money for raises. Apple sits on $240 billion cash. Amazon made $37 billion profit in 2024 and paid 0 federal income tax for the 5th time in 7 years. Meanwhile, the same corporations cut 1.1 million jobs in 2025 alone and called it efficiency. You are not behind because you bought too many lattes or didn't hustle hard enough. You are behind because the largest wealth transfer in human history has been executed in plain sight for 45 years, and they convinced you it was your fault. The 40-hour work week that your great-grandparents bled for in the 1930s is now a quaint memory. Today, it's 50 to 60 hours just to lose ground, 70 to 80 if you want to keep the lights on. And when you finally collapse, heart attack at 52, stroke at 47, burnout so complete you can't get out of bed. They'll replace you with an algorithm and call it progress. This is not work. This is industrialized exhaustion disguised as ambition. The first generation sold into debt slavery. They were told the script from kindergarten: study hard, go to college, work hard, and you'll do better than your parents. That script is dead. Millennials and Gen Z are the first generations in American history that followed every rule and still got handed a life sentence of poverty. Combined, they own just 6.1% of the nation's wealth. Baby boomers own 21% at the same age. Gen X owns 16%. The transfer that was supposed to happen has been deliberately delayed by people who refuse to retire, refuse to downsize, and refuse to die on schedule. Average student loan debt at graduation now sits at $39,200 and climbing. Total outstanding student debt just hit $1.77 trillion, more than all credit card debt and car loans combined. The average monthly payment is $503, but 42% of borrowers are either in forbearance, deferment, or outright default because the jobs they were promised never materialized. Average starting salary for a 2025 college graduate is $56,800 before taxes. Average rent for a one-bedroom in the cities where those jobs exist is $2,100 to $2,800. That means 48 to 62% of take-home pay disappears the moment the lease is signed. Add in the $503 student loan payment, health insurance, and food, And the math doesn't work. It never did. They were sold the biggest lie in modern history, that a degree was a golden ticket. Instead, it was a lifetime subscription to debt servitude. Universities tripled tuition while flooding the market with worthless degrees. Meanwhile, the trades, the apprenticeships, the paths that actually pay were mocked as jobs for people who couldn't hack college. Now, the same system that charged them $150,000 for a communications degree tells them they're entitled for not wanting to work 3 jobs to survive. 58% of Americans under 30 now say capitalism does more harm than good, not because they read theory on TikTok, but because they live the scam in real time. They watched their parents lose homes in 2008, paid triple tuition for the privilege of entering the worst job market since the 1930s, and discovered the latter had been sold for scrap years earlier. They're not lazy. They're the first generation smart enough to see the game is rigged and refuse to keep playing. Birth rates have collapsed to 1.62, the lowest in recorded history. Marriage rates for under 30s have fallen off a cliff. Home ownership for under 30s is barely 37%, the lowest since the Great Depression. They're not failing to launch. They're consciously opting out of a system that demands everything and gives nothing back. And the elites are terrified because an entire generation has stopped believing the story that kept their parents obedient. The machine that monetized human existence. Total U.S. household debt just hit $17.52 trillion and keeps climbing. Corporate profits in 2024 alone, $2.84 trillion, an all-time record. Every major institution in this country now functions as a wealth extraction device aimed squarely at the bottom 90%. Banks, corporate landlords, health insurance conglomerates, student loan servicers, private equity hospital owners, for-profit college chains, gig platforms. Every single one is a gear in the same machine. Shelter is no longer shelter. It's a subscription service with late fees. Healthcare is no longer care. It's a financial product with 29% APR. Education is no longer education. It's a debt origination factory. Work is no longer work. It's a human resource leasing program with 0 protections. The middle class was never an accident that got broken. It was the raw material that got processed. Every safeguard built after the first Great Depression has been systematically dismantled since 1980. Your rent, your premiums, your loan payments, your co-pays, every dollar you earn is already spoken for before it hits your account. The machine doesn't just want your labor. It wants your future labor, your children's future labor, and your parents' remaining assets. It's intergenerational extraction on a scale previous empires could only dream of. And the most terrifying part? It's working perfectly. The end game nobody will say out loud. This does not end with elections, new laws, or another stimulus check. The same people who built the machine own the government that is supposed to regulate it. Trust in every major institution, Congress, media, corporations, banks, healthcare, higher education, is now below 22% and still falling. Gallup has never recorded numbers this low in 90 years of polling. When enough people can no longer meet the minimum conditions for human life, shelter, food, medicine, safety, legitimacy disappears. Governments can't govern the starving. Corporations can't profit from the dead. History is brutally clear. Empires die from internal rot disguised as stability. Rome fell because its citizens became debt slaves while the elite hoarded land. France fell because the aristocracy ignored famine until the streets burned. The Soviet Union collapsed when belief became impossible. America is reaching the exact same phase, just with better marketing. The breaking point won't be a single dramatic event. Revolutions rarely start with guns. They start with indifference. People stop voting, stop consuming, stop participating. The social contract becomes a historical footnote. The moment the exploited stop blaming themselves and start seeing the architecture clearly, the illusion collapses. That moment is not coming. It is already here, and the people at the top know it. The silent depression is not on its way. It arrived years ago and set up permanent residence. 653,000 homeless, while 11.2 million homes sit deliberately empty. Full-time workers living in cars outside the warehouses they just worked 60 hours in. Hospitals bankrupting the sick while posting record profits. Rural towns dying of thirst and abandonment. An entire generation walking away from marriage, kids, and hope because the price of entry is everything they have and everything they'll ever earn. This is the new America. Deliberate, profitable, and permanent until the machine is torn down bolt by bolt. If this video made you angry, good. Anger is the first honest emotion most people have felt in 15 years. If it made you scared, even better. Fear is what keeps people obedient, until it turns into clarity. Drop the city you're watching from in the comments. Let's build the real-time map of how far the rot has spread. Drop your rent number. Drop your student loan payment. Drop the thing that finally made you realize the game is over, like if you're done accepting the lie. Share with one person who still thinks voting or working harder will fix this. And subscribe to Living Wise Global, because we're not here to comfort you. We're here to wake you up before there's nothing left to wake up to. The empire is hollow, the curtain is down, and what happens next is no longer up to them.